Hello everyone, welcome to the Totally Well Show. I'm your host, Joyce Strong. The Totally Well Show is a place where we get curious, ask questions, and explore everything to do with health, wellness, fitness, personal development, helping people, and all the things it takes to help you live a strong, joyous life. So today I have Lisa Tenner. She is a book coach and author, I think also a speaker. And welcome to the Totally Well Show.
Thank you, Joyce.
I'm really happy to have you here. You can reach out to Lisa on LinkedIn, on lisatenner.com is her website. And how did you get into this? Book author, coach,
The short
professor.
version, I hope, right?
You also teach, right?
I teach on the faculty of Harvard Medical School's publishing course. It's a CME course, so for continuing medical education, and teach about writing and book writing and publishing. Yeah, so it was kind of this circuitous path, but I'll give you the short version, and maybe later I'll give you the long version.
Oh, yes, and speaking of which, you're also going to be coming on Rock Bottom Syndicate podcast, and you're going to be talking about your rock bottom moment, so we'll save that for then.
Which did lead to this, but I'll give you the short version, which is that I did co-author a book, The Ultimate Guide to Transforming Anger. And once it came out, I realized I didn't really enjoy teaching people about their anger, even when it was, sort of being creative about it, listening inside for your inner knowing about the message of the anger and learning healthy ways to communicate. And kind of using a sense of humor with anger too. But the people who came to the workshops weren't very fun to work with, and I realized I really wanted to work with people's creativity, and so it was a bit of a soul search. I had a baby at the time, and was looking to not have like a full-time job, but really do something on my own. And it started out really creativity coaching, and then people started coming for me specifically for the writing and book proposals and getting published. So it led me rather than me kind of knowing what I was going to do.
Yeah, those organic businesses and practices are the best. That's really fascinating because you span from doing the technical stuff, but also the muse, the creativity, the being able to be in the right mental place to have it happen.
Yeah, I think with the books especially, there are a lot of pieces to it, particularly if you want to traditionally publish. If you're self-publishing, you have a lot of freedom to do whatever you want. But with traditional publishing, there are pieces that you need to have in place, and it needs to be a marketable book, and you need to understand that market and have a good plan for reaching them and already be reaching people in that market. So there's a business piece, which I have, and then good writing, secrets of good writing, which is really important. And then really getting in touch with that creative side, that muse, because that's where the magic happens. And that's where your voice really comes out. That's where your best writing comes. And people know what's real, and they're attracted to that.
Yeah. So is it because of where you're teaching that you tend to be working with a lot of people in the health and wellness space?
I would say yes, that definitely a lot of doctors and therapists and people in health and wellness because of the Harvard Medical School course. But I also work with business people, entrepreneurs, a lot of coaches, moms, people just who have an important message to share, wisdom to share, or story, expertise in lots of different areas. So I'm working now with somebody who is, she teaches leadership through horses, working with horses, and she teaches CEOs. So, all walks of life, all different kinds of things, which is fun and refreshing for me.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. Is there part of this your interest as well, that you happen to be interested in this space?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, we'll talk about rock bottom later, but in your rock bottom moments, we often reach, I think, for books about health and wellness and books, self-help books. And so that became even before that, I would say it was an interest, but it really became a deeper interest. So certainly an area that I'm always looking to grow. I think a lot of us are lifelong learners, and books are such a wonderful way to learn. So I feel like I'm always learning from my clients, and it is fun to be in a field where there's always something new to learn.
Yeah, one of the reasons I love doing this show is I'm interviewing people and learning from them, and it's shifting who I am and what I share next. So I'm never the same person after having an encounter with somebody.
Wow.
So it's wonderful. Yeah. So did you write a book first? Did you start out writing a book? Did you intend to write a book, or did it just kind of happen? Did you have, as a kid, want to be an author?
As a kid, I always thought I would be an author, but I thought it would be fiction. And I went to MIT undergrad, and my father was very practical. He was an English teacher, and he always said, do something where you're guaranteed a job afterwards. So I studied management information systems, but my minor was in writing, and I took writing classes every semester, and that was my purest joy.
Yeah.
So there was, always that desire to write a book, but when it came to it, it really came out of my rock bottom moment, I guess, and some studying I did that helped me heal. And then I wrote the book, and it really wasn't a very good book. But my friends were great about, kind of seeing the potential in it. And one friend, Pico Todd, said, I think there's something here. And she's also a cartoonist. She said, I would love to collaborate. And I had these exercises that we eventually called anger aerobics. But they were ways to tap into your creativity, your sense of humor, and your inner knowing when it comes to kind of what's here for me about this anger, and how can I utilize this in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So she helped me kind of go from just writing about my experience in a way that wasn't that interesting to something broader, and then we brought an anger expert on board, Jane Middleton Moss. So it was a 3-person book, which was really neat. I learned so much from working with those 2 women.
So in all this time, you took what you had from your studying at MIT, and then your experience with writing the book, and all of these pieces came together to give you the special sauce to be able to help people.
It is amazing how all those circuitous routes and oddball things you do that you're not sure where they fit together, and then suddenly it does all come together, and you realize this really was a path.
Yeah.
It might have meandered, but it was a path.
You didn't know why at the time. So do people come to you with, I'm just wondering, when a person approaches you to write a book, do you get that sense of that there's something underneath, like that it's not even I have to write a book?
Often, yeah. And that, that's much more powerful than I should write a book.
Yeah.
Which, is maybe not a reason to write one, but when there is that underlying thing, and some people have thought their whole lives they wanted to write a book, and other people actually are really resistant. So I worked with a woman, Pat Hastings, who every day in her prayer meditation she would get, write this book. And she said, she had gone to parochial school, and they had kind of beaten into her by the nuns that she could not write. And so she really felt like, I don't have this, I can't do this. And it was really fun working with her, because it was just all about bringing out her story. And she had these wonderful anecdotes about answered prayer in her life. And so it was really fun working with her. So I love working with people who don't necessarily see themselves as writers too, but they have a message, and whether it's feels like it's coming from elsewhere or deep within, there is this drive to share that message.
It's making me think, I have 5 kids, and when certain ones, not so much the older ones, the younger ones, were in school, the teachers were like, don't worry about the spelling, just write. And they had this creative, I forget what they called it, creative spelling, I guess, or something like that. But it didn't, so the idea that the spelling had to be correct was keeping them from tapping into the idea and being able to express themselves. Do you use anything similar to that?
I guess, I would say what I do is focus on what are the gems here and what can we build on. So, so sometimes, most people haven't really been taught to write well, and there are just a few rules that or tips that will really help you bring out the writing and make it come alive for the reader. And so I would focus on, tell me more about this. This is interesting. Tell me more about this. Let's go deeper and paint a picture for me. Sometimes when people start writing about something, they'll generalize, and that's the worst thing you can do when you're writing. You want to start that reader in a specific moment in time and space, and make that real for them. So it's usually, I won't say always, but it's usually very powerful to start with a story, even with a self-help or how-to book.
Really?
And bring us to a specific moment in time, paint a picture, and draw us in with that story. And then you can generalize from that, or maybe connect to the reader with that. Maybe you've had a similar experience. You could certainly start a book with alarming statistic or other things too. But story is one of the most powerful ways.
I'm thinking of James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. Have you read that? I recommend it often because it's about the law of building habits, and it's a how-to book in a way. But I believe he starts off the story with a story of him having an injury, a serious injury, playing sports, having a serious injury. So the beginning of the book is all about the story, and it's his rock bottom that brings you into the practical stuff. So I get that. So what are some of the things you do with people to, say you're the person who wants to, person who feels like they have something in them, they just have to tell a story. So they have a book in them, they really feel like they should be doing this, they want to do this, but it's overwhelming. Like where do you have techniques that you help people?
I do. So I'm going to share two very different things. But the first is I start people with a vision statement. Like, write a vision for what this book could do for you and your life and your work, what it can do for your readers, what kind of impact it might have on the community or the world. And really work on that vision till it feels like a 10 in terms of how inspired you are when you read it aloud. And that's so powerful for people because it's something you can read every day and stay inspired, stay with the book. It also really helps guide you because when you're clear what the vision is, and it makes you clear about who your readers are. It makes you clear about, as you make decisions about the book, this book fits the vision, but if I do this, it might be very marketable, but it doesn't really fit the vision. It doesn't fit where I want to go. So it can be really helpful in a lot of ways. And it gets you writing too, right? Writing a vision statement is easier and smaller than writing a whole book. So there are a lot of great ways to use the vision statement. The other thing is whenever we're writing, we often we've been busy all day or, sleeping, whatever, and we're not necessarily in the space to write. We're kind of carrying whatever we're carrying. If it's the beginning of the day, all the thoughts of the things I have to do, and if it's the end of the day, everything that happened in the day. And so I often have people start with just the breath and start by slowing down. It could be walking in nature. It could be just sitting and feeling the breath in the belly and breathing deeply, inhaling and exhaling a few times. And it gets us out of here, which is not where our best writing comes from. It gets us in here, embodied and in the heart. I'm going to be careful not to hit my microphone. But it gets us into our mind, body, spirit all as one, rather than just the mind taking off, which is not as powerful. And so another great exercise for that is something we do. I practice Qigong, which is a kind of out of the martial arts tradition. It's a Taoist tradition. If you've seen Tai Chi, it's similar to that. And one of the really simplest things you can do in Qigong is to shake or bounce.
Okay.
And so usually we do it standing, but we can do it here
Yeah,
sitting.
yeah.
And you'll just like shake the body, shake the hands, and if you're standing, you would be, kind of going up
A
on your
little
toes,
bouncing.
maybe even and bouncing.
Yeah, yeah.
So you just, and when we do that, we can even imagine like all the stresses of the day just leaving off our shoulders, and all the tension in the body, because tension keeps us from that space where like things just flow through us, right? The tension is a distraction, and it gets us in the mind again. But not that the mind's a bad thing, but we want it all working together holistically.
Yeah.
And so, this will kind of ground us. And then we're like this clear conduit, right? In Taoism, they would say, the heavenly and earthly energies, we're like a conduit between that.
Yeah.
And it really does make for a creative flow. It just works. So this weekend, two people in my book writing program, Bring Your Book to Life, were having, I have an accountability partner system where people can check in with each other once or twice a week, just 5 questions to stay accountable. But they decided to do a weekend retreat. They were just going to focus on writing all weekend. And so they would check in with each other, and they were both starting to feel, it was working in the sense they were writing a lot, but they were both feeling heaviness. Their topics had, one was a memoir, and memoir and other people's stories too, but really stories of loss. And the other is a guide for parents that also is dealing with a challenging subject, and actually working on the glossary put her in touch with this sadness about these kids and the challenges they're having. So they emailed me and said, what do we do? And the first thing I had them do was that bouncing, because it's just, they could like release that burden off their shoulders of other people's pain. Right?
Yeah.
And then just, kind of let things go. So it's a great place to start. If you're writing or any creative activity, is to just, or even just in the morning, just in general, that bouncing is so good. It's got all kinds of physical health benefits
Well,
too.
I think, for sure you're definitely getting your blood flowing, your heart, shifting, your lymph system,
That's right.
all of those kinds of things. The other thing too, I think is happening, and I mentioned during the preamble different people I've interviewed. So Dr. Epler, Gary Epler, has a book, Alive with Life. He's a medical doctor, and he was explaining how we can have more control over our thoughts than we realize by shifting what room in the house we're in. So what part of our brain we're working in. So what I think is happening with the breathing exercises, with the qigong and the bouncing and that, and being out in nature, those are all things that he recommends to get you out of your amygdala, out of your fight or flight, or out of the cingulate, which can be where we get very judgy or self-pity or stuck in some way, and into the more cerebral, into the thinking portion of our brain and the pleasure center. And that's where we have access now to the creativity.
Yeah. And I think most people who want to write a book feel somewhat overwhelmed and intimidated, and there's a lot of self-doubt and fear. And so it makes sense that we would be in the amygdala, and we need to bring it forward.
Yeah.
And so, any kind of deep breathing is great for that. And it relaxes the whole central nervous system. It's just a reset.
Yeah. So have you, I keep coming back to the Overwhelm, at the beginning, I'm like, how awesome it would be to write a book. Have you got any stories of people who you've helped with, that beginning place where they're really just don't know where to start? It just feels too overwhelming. I know the vision you mentioned.
Yeah. Pretty much almost, I won't say everybody, but almost everybody I work with. So, hundreds of people feel overwhelmed at the beginning.
Really?
And that's, and I'm working on a book right now, and I feel overwhelmed. I'm in the middle.
Your own book.
But it's natural because it's a big project. And so any big project, we need to break it down.
What do people worry about? What do they think about in the beginning? Like, what do you worry about?
Well, in the beginning, I think the worry is anybody going to read this? Do I really have anything to say? Is it really new or fresh in any way?
Yeah.
Am I good enough? Am I a good enough writer? Or maybe even just I'm not a good writer. I can't write. And maybe they even got messages about that. So there's like deep stuff that's getting in the way. Also, just I don't know. Should I write this book or write it in this way or this way? There's so many choices, and so we really want to start with simplifying it with that vision statement, and then who am I writing for? Who are my people? And sometimes I talked about how I sort of my career discovered me in a way.
Yeah.
So my people came to me. I didn't know my people would be doctors and therapists and coaches and entrepreneurs, but over time that's who came to me. So it wasn't it might be just like who comes to me. Those might be my people. Or it might be of the people who come to me, who are the ones I most enjoy working with. And maybe those are my people. Or who are the ones that like have the biggest leaps? Maybe those are the people. But figuring out who are my people, who's my audience. And there might be this broad audience, but you want to get to that core center of who the main target audience is and write to them.
So when you're saying that core, like, can you give me an example? I know you spoke about, for you, the people in health and medical and psychiatry, psychology, but for anyone, like, how could you give an example of what? Is it a gender? Is it a decade, age range? Is it
it really varies.
Educational background?
But the biggest thing I would say is for a prescriptive book, a lot of it is what's the problem they're trying to solve, or what's the goal that they're trying to reach. And I'll give you an example. At Harvard, at the Harvard course, I met Dr. Carrie Barron, who's a psychiatrist, and at the time she was at Columbia University. And she was pitching a book actually called I'm Creative, But I Can't Create. And then we started working together, and I said, I think your audience is bigger than maybe you're seeing it. And I would say they're people who are your patients. They're depressed, they're anxious, and they're unhappy. That's a really huge audience, and an audience that's desperate for change. And like a light bulb went off. That's right. And I said, how about the creativity cure? So it has that creativity piece, but now we're implying, it's a cure for these, because she was seeing it as really healing people with those kinds of problems, which is most of society, I think, feels.
I think people are so stifled in their potential.
So sometimes it's like, yes, those people might all be creative, but they can't create. But some of them don't even know that's the problem. They see the problem as I'm anxious, or I'm depressed, or I'm just kind of unhappy, not quite sure why, or don't feel fulfilled. So, that's where it's like the audience might be who you think, but they see themselves very differently.
So in that particular case, was it anybody who wanted to be creative, or was
it ended up being people who were depressed, anxious, or unhappy, right? So it wasn't focusing on the creativity. It was focusing on creativity as a key to.
So that's what they saw. They had. I get it now.
Yeah.
So they had no idea that they needed this. They just knew they were in pain.
Right, a lot of them. I mean, some did know, and she could have written a book with that other title and would have gotten some readers. But she got a 6-figure book deal with Simon & Schuster, and I think, or Scribner. I'm sorry, with Scribner, which at the time was part of Simon & Schuster. I think they all get bought eventually. But anyway, it was with Scribner. So it matters how you package it. That goes back to the marketing and business piece. If you're looking for a traditional publisher and looking for the largest number of readers. But having said that, you can't just go for the biggest market. So when we wrote that anger book, I thought, well, everybody needs this book, because either they're pushing their anger in or they're, lashing out, and everybody could use this book. But you don't. anyone in marketing knows you can't just sell to anybody. You have to know who your people are.
Yeah.
And so, we realized it was women in a certain age range. And so that was kind of more, who recognized that anger was an issue, whether they were repressing it or lashing out. So men read the book too, but it was helpful to define that our core audience was more females and more women buy self-help books. So most self-help books do better when they're geared towards
So
women.
how do you target it then to women, or narrow it down in the writing? What's the...
You don't just exclusively tell stories about women, but you certainly focus on the things that are interesting to women. We ended up, the subtitle was Dynamic Tools for Healthy Relationships. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to remember if that was the subtitle of it went through 2 iterations, but anyway, through one of the iterations, that was the subtitle. And so, we're focusing on relationships, right? That's a book that's going to appeal to women.
Yeah.
So you don't need to confine all your stories to that target market. In fact, I would say go broad. It's more interesting. But do be aware that, if primarily your readers are women, don't have 90% of the stories about men.
Yeah.
And don't use all football analogies unless these are all women who love football.
Right.
So know who you're speaking to. And not in a shallow sense. It's often really helpful to imagine a reader. And so it might be somebody like it could be imagining your sister-in-law or imagining your son.
So it's like you have an avatar for your reader.
And write to that person. And the writing will naturally be conversational. It'll naturally be in their language. So it's a really helpful exercise.
Wow. Well, we're almost out of time. I mean, this goes so fast. I had something I wanted to say there, and I skipped out of my head. I guess just for people to reach you, learn more. Oh, I know what I was going to say. It came to me. I know if I just stayed still for a moment. I had no idea what a book coach did or how much, and so this is really interesting to me to see because in my head it was much more about the technical stuff rather than all of this coaching and support and really helping yourself as a person and all these coaching steps, like truly coaching steps. So it's far more layered and supportive, and I could see it being a safer place to get started than trying to go off on your own and write a book. And so I really appreciate the bit of nuances that I've learned today from you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, there's a richness to it because there is all that coaching stuff, and then there is the technical, what makes good writing and editing, right?
You need that, and some of it you can look up, but the other part is really, it's more relationship, like me learning to get to know you, you know me, you can read between the lines, and you're just helping, and then keeping me out of the fear zone in the positive. So noticing when I'm stuck and reminding me. It's really what I do with people, in general, coaching people. But you've really, applied it in this way, which is beautiful. And it's so organic and correct. And I'm sure it happened because of who you just are. So
thank you.
So thank you. Again, it's lisatenner.com, and reach out, and I'm sure you're happy to get questions and comments.
Absolutely, yeah. I have a blog, and I always answer there.
Yeah.
And then there's lots of free stuff. In addition to articles, there are free ebooks on editors and book proposals, and a little mini course on getting started on your book. So lots of good stuff there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for coming on Totally Well. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Yeah.